For instance, on general notes, what is being experienced in most states of ECOWAS is an attempt to prepare government financial statement using the accrual basis. And of course, why some have not been able to do this. Of course, this move, maybe I quickly talk about this, that one of the basic intention behind bringing up IFSAS is to change government accounting system from cash basis to accrual basis. So that when we say cash basis, accrual basis, we're talking about cash basis, talking about activities that will be reported when cash is received or released. It means, therefore, that if we had an activity or a function for the year 2020, that's 2020, and we did not release the cash until 2022, we will not talk about it on 2022, even though we have the asset or item with us. And it's not tidy. That is why IFSAS is saying, no, let's do it the way it is done in private sector to a reasonable extent. When we receive an item, we have a liability, we report it that year. That is what we by accrual basis. By way of reference, we look at what West African Economic and did. Of course, all the 8 countries that were there put their heads together and say, okay, let us begin to report using accrual basis. But when you look at the reality on ground, you find that eventually there's a way they are having some challenges here. Yes, they agree to use accrual basis, but in reality, some countries are still finding it so difficult. So these are basic challenges that are facing member states in general. And by extension, whatever is happening there will likely affect what we do in ECOWAS. For instance, when ECOWAS report is strictly on IFSAS accrual basis, and the local communities have their own system of maybe dangling or moving between cash and accrual, or do what looks like IFSAS. Then when you send your report, the government of such states will have some difficulties in matter accepting your report, because they are maybe in their states they're used to they're just using cash basis. You are now preparing a system on accrual basis. Then it looks strange or so questionable to them. So these are some of the things we have to talk about. And after saying all these things, what are we trying to say? That it is not in doubt that IFSAS is a desired standard. If we want to have a near perfect, of course, we have to be mindful of the word near perfect, because it's always believed that only the Almighty is perfect. Okay, if we have to have something like a near perfect transparency and accountability in ECOWAS states, we need to adopt and apply and ensure and insist on the use of IFSAS. Now, to make this a reality, however, the MPs, you people, this body, should know that they have a lot to do. One, conscious efforts must be made towards assisting community institutions and organs in addressing the obstacles and other challenges that are militating against full adoption of IFSAS. Yes, we don't have control over any member state, that's their local activities. We don't have any right over them, but of course we can make efforts to encourage them. Why don't you look at this? Because if you look at it technically, almost all ECOWAS states, if not all, have tilted towards IFSAS. Only that the issues. And secondly, we expect the MPs to do a careful study of the outcome of the audit management letters as they come. For example, the current one before us is the 2020 audit management letter. And why are we looking at that? We want to pinpoint areas and aspects that call for attention. In the letters, of course, just as what was presented yesterday, there are areas that call for attention. We have a duty to look at those areas, look into those areas, especially marrying back with what we're expected to do, as mentioned earlier. And of course, going forward, we should ensure that the issues that we have in every audit management letter is properly scrutinized. Just overlook any. Every item raised, we scrutinize them as properly as possible. And of course, I think I need to mention this, very important, that MPs should be courageous enough. The word courage is important here. Should be courageous enough to invite the Commission, any other agency of ECOWAS, to sit down and explain the issues we discovered as raised in the audit management letters. It is our duty It's part of oversight function. It's not that you are going out there to witch hunt or to terrorize anyone. It's about trying to raise questions. This is here. Can you please explain why it is so? And with an open mind, you want to understand why. If eventually you're able to get clarification, fine. If not, in the course of your own opinion, you state it. In our opinion, a particular item in this area that's handled by this organ is not neat enough, especially looking at the expectation of IFSAs. And of course, in addition to the four above, we also have to make a conscious effort to be made at ensuring that all issues raised by the Auditor General are also tackled. And I say, where necessary, we may need to organize training and retrainings for MPs towards the internalization of the provision of IFSAs. Like I said earlier, of course, it's obvious. Not all of us here are accountants. And I said earlier, it is not until we become accountants before we can look into financial reports. So what we need to do is, if possible, organize some trainings. Let's look at the basic, especially those 5 issues mentioned earlier. How do we go about this? It could be by, we present samples of financial report before all of us, and somebody comes to tell us, okay, let's look at this thing, let's look for it in the financial report. By the time we have this, we are able to understand what it's all about. So when we have a new report before us, we know what to look out for. We go straight, we look out for this. We don't need to waste months or years or weeks in doing this, because already we know what we are to look out for. And of course, I want to say that MPs should continue to work with the consciousness of to whom much is given, much is expected in their drive to ensure transparency and accountability. Thank you very much for your attention and contributions.
Merci beaucoup, docteur. En suivant la communication du docteur, ça m'a rappelé mes cours de comptabilité internationale quand j'étais en master. Je crois que vous avez assuré, vous avez donné des informations très utiles, chers camarades, chers collègues. La deuxième communication sur les normes comptables du secteur public, si vous voulez, ont été développées en plusieurs points. Dans un premier temps, le docteur Arabe a fait une introduction et il a rappelé la mission du Parlement et également il a souligné les 13 objectifs qui sont assignés au Parlement de la CEDEAO. En deuxième point, il a fait un bref aperçu des articles 9 et 11 et en développant dans le détail l'article 9.1c et l'article 11.1. En troisième position, il a rappelé les fonctions essentielles du Parlement de la CEDEAO avant d'atterrir sur les aperçus des normes comptables IPSA, International Public Sector Accounting Standard. Et également, il a abordé l'objet des états financiers selon les normes IPSA 1 à 13 et il a établi le lien entre les normes IPSA 1 à 13 et l'article 4 de l'acte additionnel relatif au renforcement des prérogatives du Parlement, en montrant à ce niveau que l'objectif recherché est la promotion de la reddition des comptes à tous les niveaux, que ce soit au niveau comptable et au niveau politique. L'objectif qui est recherché, c'est la reddition des comptes. Au point 7, il a fait le développement sur IPSA 1 à 32. Il a donné des détails. Et également au point 8, il a parlé des principaux rôles des parlementaires dans l'assurance de la conformité aux normes IPSA. À ce niveau, il a développé 10 points essentiels. Je ne vais pas citer ces 10 points, mais nous avons le document devant nous. Mais c'est extrêmement important que chacun de nous puisse s'approprier de ces 10 points pour que, dans l'étude des rapports, nous devrions nous assurer que ces différentes normes sont respectées telles qu'il a définies. En 9e point, il a parlé de l'information à présenter dans l'état de la situation financière tels qu'ils seront présentés au Parlement. Et en dernier point, il a parlé de la conclusion et des recommandations. Et également au niveau des recommandations, il nous a recommandé 7 points. Vous avez le document devant vous, les 7 points des recommandations faites sont sur le document. Donc à présent, nous allons une fois encore applaudir le professeur pour la qualité de sa communication. Il a eu à faire 33 minutes. Nous sommes partis de 20 minutes. Il a atterri à 33 minutes. Quand on fait la balance avec la première communication où on a gagné 3 minutes, les deux professeurs, comme c'est des universitaires, ils ont géré le temps. Donc nous sommes dans le temps. Nous allons passer au débat. On va commencer par enregistrer les intervenants à gauche. À gauche, s'il vous plaît. Honorable Djibo, le vieux. À gauche. Ok, à droite, s'il vous plaît. On est à droite. Ok, il n'y a pas d'intervenant. Donc, honorable Djibo, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Toutes mes félicitations à l'orateur sur la présentation. Je n'ai pas beaucoup de choses à dire, mais je vais revenir sur les bases d'évaluation. Je n'ai pas entendu parler dans les méthodes IPSAS du coût historique. Comment est-ce que les évaluations se font? Si c'est une évaluation permanente ou s'il y a une évaluation quand même au coût historique et des évaluations tantôt par d'autres méthodes. Deuxièmement, les dettes et créances en monnaie étrangère. Je n'ai pas non plus entendu parler de comment leurs évaluations se font. Troisièmement, les événements postérieurs à la clôture de l'exercice. C'est assez important, surtout dans les institutions normalement internationales comme ça. Il doit y avoir certainement beaucoup d'impact par rapport à cet événement. Autre chose sur la conclusion et les recommandations. Je crois que la recommandation numéro 4, où on dit que les parlementaires devraient avoir le courage d'inviter la Commission et les autres agences de la CEDEAO en vue de traiter des questions soulevées par les lettres, là vous voyez que ça nous ramène à la première intervention, à savoir définir dans quel périmètre la commission d'audit évolue. Parce que si nous devons soulever les lettres, les questions soulevées dans les lettres de recommandation d'audit adressées à la direction, et si nous devons inviter la commission et les encore une fois, peut-être à l'occasion où nous allons avoir à devoir revoir les textes, se pencher sur comment vraiment définir très clairement notre périmètre d'intervention. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Merci beaucoup. Je crois que cette intervention est riche. Personnellement, moi j'ai noté un point commun, surtout pour ce qui est de l'étude ou de l'examen des rapports. Et quand vous regardez de près, ce n'est pas que le rapport d'audit, même en matière budgétaire, le rapport qui est soumis au Parlement doit respecter les mêmes préoccupations que les deux experts soulèvent. Si nous mettons que le volet politique, nous n'allons pas, même dans le cadre de l'étude du budget, nous n'allons pas réussir. Dans le cadre spécifique de nos parlements, vous savez, en début de session budgétaire, il y a des techniciens qui viennent former, il y a des séminaires qui s'organisent sur toute une semaine pour que les parlementaires vraiment puissent aguerrir des techniques et des procédés pour pouvoir, dans la sérénité, étudier le budget de l'État au Parlement présenté. C'est pour dire que ce soit le docteur James ou le professeur Salami, ils ont reconnu que le caractère de notre travail n'est pas que politique. À travers les normes, tout ce qui a été défini, s'il n'y a pas un accompagnement technique, s'il n'y a pas un regard technique dans l'examen de ces rapports, nous pouvons aller à côté, puisque l'objectif, il est c'est vraiment la reddition de comptes, c'est d'établir la transparence et la traçabilité des actes qui ont été posés par les différentes institutions et organes. C'est pour ça que je voudrais une fois de plus inviter notre administration, les assistants, à vraiment renforcer d'abord eux-mêmes le Parlement dans l'exécution de sa mission ou de ses objectifs. Également, relever dans le cadre de la reddition et de prérogatives de nos pouvoirs en matière de contrôle. Ce n'est pas que pour l'audit ou le budget. Dans les autres domaines, il faut que le Parlement puisse travailler. Nous avons la première mission principale, c'est d'abord la libre circulation des personnes et des biens. Le président de cette commission est dans le texte. Chaque député peut interpeller, peut exercer ce droit-là. Mais au niveau de chaque thématique importante pour le Parlement, nous devrons agir. Au niveau des politiques macroéconomiques, le président de la commission est là. Nous devrons également les critères de convergence quand nous étudions les rapports pays. Nous attaquons beaucoup plus sur l'état de la santé économique de nos pays. À ce niveau aussi, la communauté a beaucoup de ressources que les peuples ou les populations contribuent à mettre à la disposition pour exécuter des programmes et des projets. Nous devrons informer, savoir que ce n'est pas qu'en matière budgétaire ou d'audit que le Parlement a des prérogatives de contrôle, même dans le cadre de l'exécution des projets. Même sur le plan politique, nous avons aussi, même sur le plan politique et sur le plan de la diplomatie, nous avons les prérogatives d'aller faire des contrôles de l'exécutif. Voilà les commentaires que je voulais faire tout en remerciant et féliciter le docteur pour la clarté et la qualité de sa communication. Nous allons lui laisser le micro pour répondre à l'étape actuelle des préoccupations. Professeur, vous avez la parole.
Thank you very much, Chairman and members. And thank you very much, the Honorable, for the issues raised by intervention. If I get you right, the first one is talking about the issue of method on historical costs and as opposed to other methods. Up till now, as far as financial statement preparation is concerned, at any level, the main basis of preparation remains historical cost. And the reason is, this is the only cost that is objective and verifiable. For instance, if I have bought this pen for, let's say for instance, $1,000, there is a document that I will receive at the point of purchase that is $1,000. If as at the period of reporting, maybe the end of the year, that same pen is now $1,500. Accounting does not allow us to use the current value. No, because there is no document to evidence $1,500. What we have before us by way of invoice or receipt is $1,000. However, what happens in case of inflation, and especially hyperinflation? That is what, if you look at very, very quickly the articles of the provisions of IFSAS once again, and I'm going to pick that page where we have it. That's especially on item on page 10 now, page 10 of the slide. Now, I mean, okay, I'm going to talk from issue of from page 8, 9, 10. We have okay. The second one is page 10. That is a visa reporting date. We have somewhere on statements in hyperinflationary environment. The one that says, again, that's on item number 10, financial reporting in hyperinflationary economies. What IFSAS has done is to give the basis. How do you handle issue of inflation? Because it is because of hyperinflation that leads to a case whereby what you bought just within the year for $1,000 is now $1,500. That is why the issue of current cost accounting comes in. But one thing that is clear is that the provision of the standard is that even though we have a clear case of hyperinflation, the price of this item has jumped, has skyrocketed from the time we procure it and the time we are reporting. We must report using the historical cost base, and then because of the wide gap, we can now prepare what we call current costs report, and this will appear as a note, at best note. Okay, yes, as at the time this main asset was procured, it was $1,000, but at the end of the year, it's $1,500. Now, where it will significantly impair, on fairness, the principle of fairness, because the basis of preparation of financial statement generally is, that's what auditors look out for in the course of the financial report before them. What we call the principle of truth and fairness. How true is this matter? How fair is it to the organization? And if you permit me, let me just quickly explain a little on this. The truth of the matter is that we bought this pen for $1,000. We can evidence that. That's the truth. But because of high inflation, it has now gone up to $1,500. Now, the accounting implication of that is this. If we leave it at that, we will be reporting a financial statement that will show excess of cash over revenue over expenses that will be so huge. But in reality, it is not. For instance, by the time you talk about depreciation, if there's an asset, if we are to use, let's say we have straight line method of depreciation, at the end of the day, in our financial report, we will have put depreciation of this pen at $100. But in reality, it ought to be $150. So when we have such significant difference, then you have to prepare along with the with normal statements that you prepare using historical costs. You have to prepare along current cost accounting its own provision already in the IFSAs. How do we tackle foreign currencies, especially if you look at around I think where is that aspect now? Revenue from exchange transactions and so on and so forth. These are duly captured, and that also is taking us to post-balance sheet events. Yes, one thing that is certain is that the financial regulation states clearly, or should state clearly, at what point do we expect financial report? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've been hearing things like 90 days and so on and so forth. I think that is what it's talking about. Not less than 90 days after, if I am not mistaken, please. Please, we may check to be sure of that. But I think that what that should say is that not less than 90 days after the end of a financial year, we should be able to have audited financial reports. Now, it is after this that this now comes to us as MPs to look into these issues with second eye and be very sure that, okay, these issues that we have been talking about are properly and duly captured. Else, we raise our opinions as may be necessary. So, any other matter that must have arisen. Let's say, for instance, of course, government financial years usually follow the January to December calendar. We have an item that we bought, an asset we bought as at 1st December, but we did not pay for it until 31st January of the following year. The time we pay for it is different from the time we procure it. Should we ignore? These are what it's talking about. Should we ignore? No. Those events that occur immediately after the balance sheet date, we should have a way of, bringing them back into the appropriate period. And that is one beauty of accrual method of accounting. it will be, under the cash basis method, you will not report that asset until January. But Accra allows you to report the asset now when you procure it in December. So these are properly captured and discussed by item number 14. And record 4, there's a reference made to item 4 on the coverage. How audit committee is to evolve at what point. To me, maybe taking from the discussions that have been coming up since yesterday, to me, there should be, if not necessary, thank God our public lawyer, professor of public law is here, to suggest, if it becomes necessary, we may need to go back to the act and make some, even including FR, and make some suggestions. That, for instance, if the law says 90 days after the balance sheet, by the end of the year, we should be able to have the financial report. Now, we should have a window, maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks, to look into, and I think it should come first to this body. Because you cannot form, like I said at the beginning, you cannot form opinion on what is not before you. See,